Hello, and welcome to Ask John. I think this is episode 7 of Ask John. This is the show where John interviews interesting guests. Actually, my interesting guests ask John. So my interesting guests interview me. I'm John Reuscher. And then I switch it around because my guests are more interesting than I am, and so I really like to interview them. But Lee Pullen is here today, and he's the director of the Marin County Office of Aging and Adult Services, and he's a very interesting man and very articulate, and I'm kind of anxious for him to tell us what's going on. But first, I think I'm going to talk about John.
Oh, well.
Is that okay, Lee?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm very interested in your agency and what you're doing, and you're working with an aging population, and I'm a financial advisor, and guess what? I'm working with an aging population as well, and so I'm experiencing some of the challenges that you experience, and particularly with this issue of exponential technology, which is just changing our lives in ways that are sometimes unpredictable, and in some ways quite predictable. Young people, for example, might expect to have several careers and several retirements because you start off, you learn a certain trade, you're in an occupation, that occupation gets taken over by a robot. This is technology coming into our lives. So young people need to be prepared to work a few years and take some time off. And that means they probably should be saving some money and get retrained, move on, maybe a different occupation, and so on. Older people, retired people might expect, because of medical technology, might expect to live longer and live healthy. And they are more at risk of outliving their money than they have been in the past. So this is quite a big issue. So we're dealing with that. I love working with retired. You have a question?
I do. I just the term exponential technology. Absolutely, people should be saving.
So you know the rules.
medical
You know the
stuff.
rules, right? You're supposed to ask me questions. So this is
Well, you just started talking, John. So
okay. So I talked about exponential technology.
yeah, what is that?
So it's called exponential technology because it's exponential. The exponential part of it is that technology. I think at first they were saying that the effectiveness of our technology is doubling every 7 years.
Wow.
It used to be 7 years. And the cost of the technology is halving every 7 years. And now they're saying, well, maybe it's every 3 years, 4 years, 2 years. I don't know. In some areas it probably is 2 or 3 years where things are improving so quickly. Makes it almost hard to predict what's going to happen.
How does that play into financial planning?
Well, just what I was saying a moment ago, that it's affecting our lives. And then the other part of it is that we want to be invested in this exponential technology. I'm I guess what you call an unaffiliated advisor with Edelman Financial Services, and Rick Edelman wrote a book called The Truth About Your Future, and he lays out all these issues with exponential technology, those careers that may be at risk because of exponential technology, but also he's looking at the investments, and he's actually created a fund that invests in exponential technology. And you'd think, well, that's easy to do. There's a lot of technology funds out there that select the companies that are involved in technology, but he's taken it a step further and identified companies that will benefit by the exponential technology. For example, Pizza Hut. Why would Pizza Hut be on that list? It's because I don't even know
Order it faster or something.
I don't even know. I don't even know what at my age. I don't know what an Xbox is, but I understand the kids play on the Xboxes, and they're looking at their screen and they can push a button, pause it, and order a pizza right off of there.
Wow.
So that is exponential technology. So Pizza Hut is a beneficiary of exponential technology. So
what kind of careers do you think will sort of phase out because of this exponential technology? And as we think of older persons, say 50, 60, 70 plus, what kind of jobs might be out there?
You are asking such good questions. Let's see. Did I ever ask you questions that you couldn't answer easily?
I think you have.
So some of the occupations that seem safe is Therapists, for example, they're
right,
pretty safe
right.
because that's a one-on-one kind of occupation. Could be that dentists, for example, could be at risk because their job. I don't know. I'm not sure dentists. Anyway, if you buy the book, there's a whole list of occupations in the safe ones and the ones that are at risk. My mind is not working quite as fast to come up with them. And
I think what that speaks to is to what you were saying just a few minutes ago, that we can't just think of one career and stop. We shouldn't do that. It's
Exactly.
not healthy for us to do that. And certainly the younger folks, the millennials, aren't even thinking in those terms.
Yeah, so in your work, you're dealing with a lot of different issues. I'm looking for the slide here that talked about the top 6 concerns. So you in your agency, you're dealing with several concerns. Let
me just give a little bit of an overview for your audience of the Office of Aging and Adult Services. So we are a part of your local county of Marin, a part of the Health and Human Services, the local offices, but we get our authority from the feds, from the Federal Health and Human Services, and we're charged with looking at the needs of older adults. The feds define that as people 60 plus. So every 4 years we go out and we say, what's important to you? What's of concern to you? How can we help? How can we together help make this Marin a better place? In addition to that, we fund a variety of services and so forth. But the concerns that we found when we did our last community-wide assessment a couple of years ago, people were concerned about falls and memory. They were concerned about economic, financial security, so I'm really glad to be able to connect with you to talk about that topic. People were concerned about being able to hold on to their money and not being the victim of crime and financial abuse. Something else I hope we can get a few minutes on. End-of-life planning, making sure you have everything in order so you don't burden your family with trying to make those tough decisions at a time nobody wants to. And then loneliness and isolation. And what was striking was these top 6 concerns were out of a list of 18. And our people here in Marin that are 60 plus were concerned about these issues regardless of where they fit on the economic spectrum. So whether they were poor, whether they were poor and struggling or doing well off, isolation and being alone was just an equal concern for them.
Yeah, and the financial security. You would think that people who have abundance of assets may feel totally secure. I don't know. Is that true? Because I have clients that have a lot of money invested, and they seem to be. There's some insecurity about what's going on in their lives. Yeah.
That's a really good point, and it is a very individual sense of security. I did some workshops with some other folks, our Marin Women's Commission and our local Commission on Aging, which serves to advise me in my work. And one of them that we did, we went around and we asked that, when have you felt the most secure? And people who would say, even the times when I had or currently more assets, you sort of feel less concerned because you're worried about the future, or maybe you've lost a spouse and you don't feel like you can manage the assets. You're concerned about them running out. There can be a whole variety of reasons to not feel secure. But objectively, we want to help people realize that they are, if they are, and help them to hold on to their assets and to have it.
That's the trick of my business in the financial planning is to figure this all out. And I struggle with some clients that they really don't have quite enough, but if they're in good health, we can figure out how they can keep working. And sometimes they don't need to keep working at the same job, that they can take a job. As long as they're in good health, they can take a job that's more fun. I sort of advise them to find some way to occupy their time in a way they really enjoy, and then let's see if that could bring in a little money somehow. You could turn that into a job that pays. And as it turns out, it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to earn a lot to make a big difference over the long term. Sometimes just working an extra year will make a big difference. We do all this planning, and fortunately people are living longer and healthier, and so there's some opportunities for that to happen.
Well, they certainly are in Marin. In Marin, we have one of the longest life expectancies in the country. Out of over 3,100 counties, women and men here in Marin rank in the top 10 or 15 of longevity. So planning ahead, maybe working a little longer is going to be important. We want people to have their good health so they can enjoy it and have the economic security.
You were talking something called age-friendly county of Marin?
Yeah.
And that's a part of the World Health Organization?
Right,
yeah.
Yes. The World Health Organization, about 10, 11 years ago, started looking at how our population is growing around the globe. So it's not just here in Marin or California, our nation, but around the globe. Cities and towns and communities are going to have more people who are older than younger. And they said, well, what is it that we need to make these places that are livable for older adults to get around and be connected? And they came up with 8 different elements, basic things like housing and transportation and access to health care and so forth, and being able to be involved in their community. And they said, you know, if we have this and if we have cities and towns that are working toward this, it'll be a better community for all. They're called livable communities for all ages. And we often think of that person who made it a little harder for them to walk down the sidewalk, or they want to get out and enjoy our parks. If there was just a bench there, they could take a rest. But that
simple things.
Yeah, simple things. That harried parent who's got the kid in tow, 2 or 3 of them, maybe they want to take a break too. So it's good for people of all ages. If we think
one of the most compelling things I've heard you talk about is this isolation that a lot of people feel, and you recited some statistics about the number of people who live alone.
Yeah. Well, the isolation and loneliness is just such a negative factor on people's health. The more isolated you are, the more you end up, you spiral down and you disconnect yourself. You don't have your friends, you don't have your family. It starts to affect your physical health. It affects your cognitive health. So if you're concerned about your memory and cognition, it's good to still stay connected with people around you, your neighbors and people in your community. And it kind of makes you more vulnerable to financial scams and all kinds of things that can go wrong in your life. So it's a situation we have in Marin here where over a third of older adults live by themselves, and out in our West Marin area, it's over 40% of people are living alone.
That's a real shame. Those people are very vulnerable, aren't they?
They're very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's why sort of this age-friendly community is about know your neighbors, stay connected, go visit somebody, help them out.
And I think you have several roles here, but I think one thing you do is you facilitate people-to-people connection. But you also you sort of represent a government. Some people think maybe there's a government imposition on that,
Sure.
and I asked you before about what happens if you have someone. The neighbors, maybe some of the family, think that this person needs a lot of help, and the person himself, herself, they're fine. They think they're fine. So who makes that judgment? What do you do about that?
We want the individual to make that judgment. We are not here to knock on your door and interfere in your life. You have the right to folly and exercise poor judgment. It's your choice, and we want to make sure that happens. If somebody doesn't want us involved helping them, that's their choice. Now, of course, there are situations where people may have declined cognitively to such a degree they really do need someone else making decisions for them. But by and large, we're not there to interfere in people's lives.
How do you get to that? How do who gets to pull that trigger? Who gets to say that this person really does have a cognitive impairment? You got to get the doctors involved in it, I guess.
The doctors are involved in it, but it's ultimately a judge. It's a court decision. It's a very, very serious matter to take someone's right away to make a decision about their health care, about their finances. Nobody wants to do it. We want to make sure, though, that people do have the support they need, and ultimately, anytime that happens, it's going to be a judge who makes the decision.
Anything else you want to say about these top 6 concerns?
I think that when I look at the feeling isolated or depressed, I think that's the one that strikes me probably the most. And thinking of people being alone, trying to work toward our Commission on Aging and other groups, trying to keep people connected and so forth. I think it's important that people volunteer and get involved, whether they're doing a job after their first retirement. If they're not, they should try to get involved. There's so many opportunities here with so many of our community-based organizations. I think that it just ties into our financial health as well. And you know, I think there's, I don't know how you and maybe the financial advisors think about this. I'd love to hear, since I'm supposed to be able to ask you a question or two. But you know, we see can see the extremes of it. We can see people so isolated and worried that they won't spend a dollar to take care of themselves, or we can see people using what money they have, spending it frivolously to make themselves feel better. So I think it kind of ties in strongly with financial security.
Yeah, and we were talking about the financial abuse as well. And there's physical abuse, but financial abuse, which is going to be a really tough thing. I've had you know, a little bit of experience with a couple of clients that looked like there was things going on, and it's really tough, especially when the victim doesn't really understand that she's a victim or he's a victim. They don't always see it that way, or sometimes they change their mind, or sometimes it's a family member that's victimizing them, and that's the only connection they have. So
all of that can happen. And we do see all of it, where reports come into us from someone who's, the allegations that they've been victimized financially in some way or the other. It could be, like you said, a family member, it could be a caregiver, it could be a neighbor, and people have a variety of reactions to it. The alleged victims, people are very protective of their kids. We understand that. Where we see a lot of the problem is where people didn't do their planning. That's a theme I keep coming back to. But you know, whether it's about your healthcare directive or it's about how you want your money managed when you're not able to or not as interested in having such a hands-on approach to it, make that decision and make it known as to who you want to be involved in your life.
On a fairly routine basis, do you even ask how do you deal with people who don't have a will or a trust or the healthcare directive or so forth? Is that like on a questionnaire that you ask routinely? Or?
You know, we don't have it on a form, but whenever we would be talking with someone, I mean, depending on their situation, it is a part of the. It's a part of the person's holistic life, right? Your health care, who's your doctor, who helps you get to your doctor's appointments if medical care is of importance to you, or do you have connections with your kids, your faith community? Do you have someone that manages your finances? Do you manage it yourself? Have you made those decisions of who you want? It's not entirely routine in every situation, but it's certainly a big factor that we would consider with most people. And just to clarify, we wouldn't be in the position of making those wills and trusts. That's not what we do. We just think it's a really good thing for people to do.
Yeah, bring it to the table. Yeah. Of course, I don't either. I'm not an attorney. I wouldn't draft the will and a trust, but that's certainly a question I ask all of my clients and get involved in that, and I refer them to people who do. So often they'll have their own attorneys. But it's an important part of your planning.
It really is.
Yeah. Did we want to talk about this, or did you want to save that?
It just sort of underscores what we have been talking about, John, is that here in Marin County, we are already more of an older county than a younger county. So when we think of what Marin may have been like 20, 30, 40 years ago, lots of kids running around, still lots of kids running around, but there's more 60-year-olds running around and 70 and 80-year-olds, and that's just where we're going to be trending in the next 15 to 30 years. And
this brings to mind the issues of Social Security, which I remember, I don't want to say 30 years ago when it was longer than that, when I first started getting into the financial.
We'll just work with 30. That'll just be our benchmark
when
for
it's
this
30,
conversation.
It's more than 30, that's fine, more than 30 is enough. When I first started working in the financial services, young people, and then at that time I was one of the young people, we thought, Social Security is not going to be there for us. And that's still the case. Young people think that. People in their 50s are worried about that.
Right.
Well, people now, that are close to retirement are worried about it because it's becoming more and more of a crisis. But it seems like, they talk about this being the political third rail, and Congress is never going to get to fix it, although they did work at it quite a few years ago, and it raised the retirement age the normal retirement age for people who were younger and had longer to go. And I think that turned out well. I think that took some pressure off the system. What do you think is the best solution, though, for the Social Security thing?
I think it's a broad societal change in how we view money and look at money and talk about money. We don't talk about money. We don't talk about it much in high school. We don't talk about it much in college, at least to my knowledge. It's been a while since I've been in college, but I didn't have any courses unless I chose them, which I could choose, on how to manage and plan ahead and realize that Social Security wasn't going to be the answer for every financial need necessarily in older adulthood. I think that we also need, as a society and a nation, to recognize that we are living longer, will be living longer for a long time to come, and need to think longer term than short term. Easier said than done. We see how divided our Congress has been for quite some time now. How we can't even get a federal budget until March, and it was supposed to have started in October. So I think we have a lot of work as a nation to come together and look at all the different ideas that may come up. Should it be just basically a safety net program, and if people have more income, not contribute and not receive Social Security? All kinds of strong, hard feelings around that.
There are a lot of fixes. There are a lot of ways to fix it. But like you say, it's got to be sort of a cultural shift, I think, and more attention put on it, and it's got to be bipartisan. We've got to
Absolutely.
have,
Well, I think it is definitely a cultural shift. We go back to when it was founded. It wasn't intended to last as long. I think there was that golden age. My grandparents, when they retired, they sort of had the golden age of pension, of retirement, of Social Security. And I think as boomers were thinking, well, this is what it'll all work out nicely like that. And gee,
there's so many people that
are.
There's so many people that are not even close to having what they need to retire.
Yeah.
And the life expectancy.
That's what I was talking about earlier. You can see the green bar is the women in Marin. This is an average. It ranges from the upper 70s to the low 90s here in Marin. The point being that in Marin, better than California and better than the United States, both for women and men. So we want people to be able to live those years with safety, financial security, and all those other things that are on the list of concerns.
Yeah. Income levels.
Yeah, I think this is what you were talking about. The people are in the middle, or we should talk about the people in the middle. That this graph shows the blue, and the blue for sure are the people that are really struggling at the poverty level, but they can get some kind of public assistance programs. And that red and green is where we see people who have incomes where it may be a struggle for them, or they may have enough for something like long-term care insurance. I think that's something people should look at and make some. I'm not advocating one way or the other, but people make some decisions around that.
I talk to my clients every review meeting. I'll talk to my clients about long-term care and long-term care insurance. And there are other solutions rather than insurance. The insurance isn't always the solution. The best solution is to have a whole lot of assets. But there are not many of us that are going to be in that spot. And we kind of segment it into two groups. I think we have three groups here, but the people who don't have much at all, those people, they do have a safety net, which is Medi-Cal, which is the federal Medicaid, and they have to not have much. I think I forget what the number is, but it's something like $120,000 is the exempt amount. So if you have $120,000 of assets, less than that, excluding the equity in your home, then you are eligible for Medi-Cal. That's great. Nobody wants to be there, but that is good. And you probably don't have the resources to pay a premium on a long-term care policy, which frankly is a bit expensive. The benefits are tremendous. So maybe you pay a lot, but you get the benefits are wonderful. Then that other group, those people who are high net worth people, don't really need it. They can afford the premium. They don't really need it. Some of them buy it anyway just because it makes some sense financially and protects some assets for the heirs.
And
the
those,
middle group.
Well, the middle group, and those assets that you have to separate out, that 120, that may mean that one spouse has to be poor to get the care that she needs because the assets have been split. The basic thing with Medi-Cal is that you're going to have to spend down and not have those assets.
A single
for you.
individual, if you're not married, a single, you have to spend down to $2,000.
Right,
Incredible.
Right. $2,000.
Yeah. So it's the people in the middle who can afford the premium on the insurance and would really benefit most by the benefit.
You asked me about Social Security. This is sort of another societal, social conversation, depending on where people may be on the economic policy viewpoint or the party viewpoint. But with the Affordable Care Act, in the beginning there was an insurance part of the Affordable Care Act. So somebody at some point said, gee, we need to look ahead 10, 20, 30 years and put money aside to take care of people when they need care, to be able to live in the community as long as they want. Well, it was decided really quickly that was too expensive, so it was cut out. So still lots of decisions for us to make again as a nation.
Yeah, these are really tough decisions, and unfortunately, we have politicians making these decisions for us, and what is their motivation, and blah blah blah, and we could get into all of that. But
yeah, and I think I will just a little bit, since I'm from the government. Every politician I meet, I feel that there's really good intention, and they do. I don't want to be Pollyannish, but they do work for us, and so it's really us as their constituents, us as members of the public.
This is the cultural change. This is the cultural change. We have to, the populace, have to make this change and demand that of our representatives. Yeah. I was just thinking, we were talking earlier about government getting involved and so forth. And the one place that I think that the government has really done a good job is on the state level with long-term care insurance. So what they've created this thing called the partnership, whereby the state is partnering with the insurance companies so that when someone receives a claim benefit from a long-term care policy, that is added to that exemption amount. And I wish I knew the exact number, but I'll say it's about $120,000 of exempt assets you have to spend down to that amount in order to get Medi-Cal, right? So you get this partnership plan, and the state mandates that this works this way. Every dollar that you receive in benefits from the long-term care policy adds a dollar to that exempt amount. So if you receive $100,000 of benefits, which wouldn't take very long to do if you're under claim, then you've added $100,000 to that exempt benefit. So ultimately, if your insurance runs out, you have a higher level of protection so that you can get Medi-Cal.
Well, this is an example of the way we do need to work at it on a policy level and inform our elected officials, so that's a great example to use.
Yeah, I want to get back to this one slide we talked about, the projections, and I looked at this. I took one look at this and I said, gee, that looks like a problem. And what did you and I was thinking in terms of the Social Security thing, two workers for one, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But I think everybody understands that. What did you say? I said, Lee, that looks like a problem.
And I say, well, I don't see it that way at all. I see it as a bright future. Never have we ever had our county, our country, our world be this blessed with so many older adults who have experience, who have wisdom, who have time to contribute, who can be involved in so many different ways. You've talked about second career, second jobs, volunteer work. I think we're going to be a much richer community. I think older adults will be helping older adults. Yeah, there's going to be health problems and all of that. I don't mean to minimize that, but every decade of life has its challenges and opportunities.
Okay,
So
you know what? I like your attitude. So you can come back on my show.
all right, thank you, John.
Thank you so much for being here
Wait,
today.
what about my
It was a
questions?
pleasure.
I had.
Time's up.
Okay.
Okay, Lee, thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, take care. Thanks for joining us today, and come back.